there.
Yeah.
I am Deborah Sharmaluz with Technically, a news organization that serves a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. Today, ahead of our May 10th Developers Conference, we're talking about how you can succeed as an individual contributor with Leslie Chapman, who is a software engineer at Comcast. We're releasing these series of technical talk videos in the lead up to the Technically Developers Conference, part of Philly Tech Week presented by Comcast. Leslie, passing it over to you. Excited to hear your expertise on the topic.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Deborah, for the wonderful introduction. So, my name is Leslie Chapman, and I am a distinguished engineer at Comcast. I've actually been at Comcast for 16 years, and throughout my entire 16-year tenure, I have been an individual contributor. Throughout that time, I've spent most of that time building television products, specifically the television interfaces that a lot of people use on not only the biggest screens in their house, but also the small screens that they hold in their hands, such as X1, Flex, and Stream. The really great thing about my job is not only building television, something that I'm passionate about even in my spare time, but that it has allowed me to travel the country talking with people. And I was actually even honored with 2 different Emmy Awards, one for the interface for X1 and the other for our voice remote, which is just the coolest thing. When I went into software engineering, I would have never thought that I would be honored on not 1, but 2 Emmy Awards. And along my journey, I've also picked up a few patents. So it has been a fun and wild ride of 16 years, and I'm looking forward to the next many. Well, as I stated, I'm an individual contributor. And what that means is I have no direct reports. And a lot of people often ask me, does that mean I have no influence? Because I don't control resources such as a budget, and I don't control resources like, well, people. So, how is it that I'm able to influence some of our biggest technical decisions without controlling those resources? Well, as you must know, us individual contributors are vetted and admired for our technical guidance and our ability to influence the technical direction of our companies. So, how did I get there? As I started to think about it, I thought about the word influencer. And these days, when we hear the word influencer, I think a lot of us start to think about social media influencers. Now, I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but I certainly know what the word influencer is. And I've heard of a couple famous influencers, and maybe you've heard of them too. Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton. Those are the 2 people that pop into my mind when I think about famous influencers. And I started to wonder if maybe there's some lessons that we can learn from them or some parallels of how they operate in the social media world and the way that I've been able to navigate the technical industry. So the first thing that we might notice when we think about someone like Kim Kardashian or Paris Hilton is the immediate name recognition. Of course, Paris Hilton's name is recognizable not only because of her, but more because of her family, the Hilton family. We've probably all stayed at Hilton hotels at some point. Kim Kardashian really made a name for herself, even though she did come from a famous family and has a famous last name. But that's the first piece of advice and first lesson that we can take away from these famous social media influencers is name recognition. Now, I wasn't born with a famous, instantly recognizable name, but what I can do to try to make sure people remember me is to always introduce myself, first and last name, as you might have noticed I did at the beginning of this talk. And when I introduced myself to people, I like to always brag a little bit and extol my achievements. You might have noticed I did that too. As you might remember, I've been honored on a couple Emmys. And I did that on purpose because now I've got your attention. Now you might be thinking to yourself, who is this Leslie Chapman? And why should I listen to her? As I'm sure you can imagine, when Paris Hilton or Kim Kardashian meet people, they likely don't just go, oh, hey, I'm Kim. I'm pretty sure Kim Kardashian probably always introduces herself with her first and last name. And most of us have already heard of her because her name precedes her. But if she was meeting someone who, by some miracle, hasn't heard of her, I'm pretty sure she'd introduce herself by saying, I'm Kim Kardashian and I'm really famous for X, Y, and Z. So let's do the same thing. Make a name for yourself. Make sure people know who you are and why you deserve to be in the room. It's not just about making a name for yourself, but also making a brand for yourself. That'll help people with name recognition. Part of my brand that most people know about me pretty instantly is that I really love cats. You might be able to tell that from my background here. But whether it's that you love cats or you wear really fun socks or you're really into bicycle riding, make sure that along with extolling your technical achievements, maybe you give something a little bit softer for people to remember you by. So once you've made a name for yourself and a brand for yourself, you're in a pretty good spot when people say things like, oh, you're Leslie, I've heard of you. But what you really want people to say is, oh, Leslie, I've heard of you. I can't wait to work with you. So, on to the meat and potatoes of how to influence technically. Once people know your name, know your brand, how do you let them know that your technical chops really stand out and your personal accountability chops really stand out? Everyone here listening to this is an amazing technologist. The fact that you are attending Technically Philly or a Technically event means that you're invested in your career and that you are invested in growing. And so I already know you're an amazing technologist. That's kind of, that's where we all start out. So how do you differentiate yourself? Because that's really what it's about. And I like to think of an analogy. I like to think back to being in high school and being in phys ed class and playing a pickup basketball game. And as we all remember that awful moment when you'd line up and people got to pick and it felt like an actual popularity contest. But what I like to think back to, and what we can take away even as technologists, is that there might have been somebody in that lineup waiting to get picked that might have been the tallest person in the class. But if they were really mean on the court and just a terrible teammate, they probably weren't getting picked first, even though they were the tallest. And maybe the person next to them that was a foot shorter, but was a wonderful teammate, great to play a game with, kept you laughing the whole time, even if you were losing this game, they would get picked first. And that lesson carries through with us today. Be the kind of person that you would want to work with. And doing that is all about building trust. One of the first things I think is incredibly important is doing what you say you're going to do. Following through with what you have agreed to. We all know those people that get about 90% of the way through a project and just can't seem to finish that last 10% and get it across the finish line. And I'm sure we've all been really frustrated with them. Don't be that person. It sounds pretty simple, but sometimes you have to say it to yourself and think about it. Gather yourself a reputation for completing the things that you say you're going to do. And sometimes that means breaking things down into smaller, achievable portions. But it feels great when you can check that box and say, I have completed this thing for you. And people take notice of it. The same way people take notice of the folks that don't ever seem to finish what they say they're going to do. Build a reputation on getting things done. The next piece of advice I have is to listen. This is sometimes very hard for us engineering folks. We're very excited and passionate about the technologies we work on, and we're excited to share our ideas, which we should be. But oftentimes, rushing to respond to people and rushing to get your idea out there first means you're not listening to what other people are saying. I think back to earlier in my career when I was very gung-ho and couldn't wait to get my ideas out there ahead of everybody else's so that I could get credit for being the first one to say it. And I remember the first time I worked with somebody else that did that. And I found it incredibly frustrating. It was a wonderful learning experience for me because it was like a mirror was being held up to myself. I saw this other person's behavior, not listening to what was being said, interrupting people, jumping to just say what they wanted to say. And I found it so off-putting. And I realized I sometimes acted that way too. And so I made a conscious effort to not do that. My instinct was still to jump in and be the first to say something. And it was an active process that I had to go through in order to not do that and to force myself to listen. But what I found when I listened was that I could be an aggregator of ideas. What do I mean by that? Well, it's very rare that one person's idea is the best solution. That's why we work on teams. And when there's somebody willing to sit and listen to everyone around the table and aggregate all of those wonderful ideas together, it builds up into something wonderful. And so I put myself in this uncomfortable position of listening and found a way to being an aggregator of ideas. And I started getting some of my first compliments about what a great teammate I was. And that people wanted me in more meetings, even though I don't love being in meetings, because I could aggregate those ideas for people. And the aggregation that I could do led to my own personal influence. The next thing that I found along the way that really helped to be an influencer was staying positive, even when things are difficult. It's very easy to get frustrated, to get down in the dumps about a project that's not going right, or a change in direction, or a reorg. And every organization needs those people in leadership, in technical leadership, with influence, that can tell the other members of the team it's going to be okay. Even if I'm a little worried inside, I try to do that for the good of the team and for the morale of the team. And for that reason, people often look to me and my influence, and they will emulate whether they're feeling good or bad about a situation by whether I'm feeling good or bad about a situation. And I would rather the entire team feel good. So try to stay positive. And the last thing that I realized in building trust and being the person that people want to work with is the importance of saying no. Early in my career, I never wanted to say no. I wanted every project that was ever thrown at me, and I certainly got myself in over my head and ended up working nights and weekends because of what I said earlier, which is if you say you're going to do something, do it and do it all the way. And so it is very important to say no when you're in over your head and you don't have any more capacity. But it is also important to suggest somebody else that could possibly do the project. And so that brings me back to our friends, Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian. They don't do this whole social media influencer thing on their own. They have an entourage. Kim has her sisters and her sisters' husbands and yada, yada, yada. And Paris has a whole family of other Hiltons and Real Housewives. But this is actually a really important part of being an influencer. Giving back to and surrounding yourself with people that support you, those people are going to help you have that influence. So when you're saying no to a project, you can say, no, I don't have time to work on that project, but I know this wonderful person who would be great for that project. And now you're expanding your network and you're giving people giving other people the chance to shine. One of the most important things that I have done has been getting into mentorship. I am very passionate about mentoring. Making sure that you're mentoring other people means that you can move on to bigger and better projects and hand off the smaller ones to people that you trust. And it starts an entire cycle. The last thing that I would like to bring up about how to build influence is you have to diversify. When we think back to our friends, Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian, they are absolutely diversified in the things that they put on their social media pages. They will sell anything from couture evening gowns to athletic wear, from organic, holistic kombucha to champagne and other alcoholic beverages. And as engineers, it's important for us to diversify as well, because that's part of how you spread your influence. So make sure you're getting outside of your comfort zone with regard to the technologies that you use. Learn different languages and technology stacks. If you're a front-end developer, try out back-end development and vice versa. Get outside of your comfort zone and diversify with regards to the teams that you work with. Meet new people. Use the people that you're mentoring to grow your network. And last but not least, get outside of the office to grow your network and diversify and grow your influence. Volunteerism, standards boards, and things like public speaking are amazing ways to grow your influence and to give back. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go update my social media to say I was here today speaking with all of you. And thank you very much to Technically for the opportunity. Back to you, Deborah.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thanks again for joining us, you guys. We hope to see you in person at PerPay on May 10th for the IRL portion of this event. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to visit our website, and we'll talk to you all later.